My friends, the American Secretary of the Treasury wrote a sentence last night in the British newspaper that I want you to listen to very carefully. He wrote that, at dawn, the economic D-Day against Iran begins, the largest financial offensive ever mounted against an adversary in history. And this dawn is today, August 24th. And just a few hours after this statement came out, the answer from Iran came. And the one who answered was the man who leads their Supreme National Security Council. He warned that if the economic war continues, not a single drop of oil will leave the Strait of Hormuz, neither through the strait nor anywhere else in the Persian Gulf. And he also said that any country that participates in or supports this economic war will be treated as a country that has gone to war directly with Iran. And in this live stream, I'm going to explain to you exactly what these sanctions do, because it's not what most of the headlines are saying. And I'm going to show you the escalation of threats that have come from the Iranian regime over the past 20 weeks. And then I'll take you to Gaza to wrap up the video, where last night the Prime Minister called an emergency meeting because of something that seems small but isn't. And in the end, I saved two pieces that almost no one noticed. A meeting between Israelis and Syrians that happened today, or is still going to happen today, in Jordan, and the name of the man who is going to Iran carrying a message from the Americans. Live from Israel, live from where everything happens, organizing the chaos of information for you. Leave a like now, right now, go ahead and hit that like button, give it a thumbs up at the start so you don't forget to do it later. Check if your subscription is still active and turn on the notification bell, because that's what lets you know when I go live, especially when something big happens here in the region, and that should start in the next few hours. Let's look at what was written here, because every sentence in this introduction he wrote is aimed at someone. The Treasury Secretary gave an overview of what has been done so far, and here's his summary. He said that the Americans dismantled Iran's military capability, said they destroyed almost 100 of the country's military industrial parks, and said they buried their nuclear program. And that's why, according to him, the campaign is now entering its final stage. Pay close attention, he said this, folks, the final stage, which is to completely cut off the economic veins that sustain that regime. He wrote that the goal is to cut every economic artery that keeps that regime alive, until Iran is left alone in the world. And then comes the part that isn't directed at Iran, but at the rest of the world. He warned that any country that continues to support that regime will be isolated along with it. And he added a message for those who are on the fence, those countries that still haven't decided. Those who are afraid to challenge Iran shouldn't underestimate the cost of testing the United States. That wasn't Donald Trump who said it, it was the US Treasury Secretary. And he had another statement as well. I want you to pay very close attention to this. He said they will use every agency, every authority, every tool that many people thought they would never use. This time, this isn't the kind of language you hear in a sanctions package. This is a warning that the rules of the game have changed. In an interview on American television last week, he had already spoken even more directly, saying that they are going to bring down that regime. He was the first to say that publicly there in the United States. And it was also him who called what's happening the biggest coordinated economic isolation campaign in the history of the world. The press conference with the details is scheduled for this afternoon, local time in the United States, of course, and I'll bring you whatever comes out of that press conference. If I can, I'll do it in real time as well. And now, let's get to the lesson. Because here's the difference between the headline you're about to read now, if you just woke up on the other side of the world, and reality. What does a regular American sanction do? It prohibits Americans or American companies from doing business with someone. What's being set up now is something else. It's a sanction that directly targets foreigners. In practice, every country and every company in the world will face a single choice. Pay attention, everyone. Either you do business with Iran or you do business with the United States. You can't do both. And this doesn't apply only to oil, for those who are already asking about that. It's not just about oil. It applies to the bank that processes the payment, to the insurance company that covers the ship, and to the port that receives the cargo from that ship. And it also applies to the company that resells that barrel under a different name. Iran, just so you have an idea, has been living under sanctions for 47 years and is still around. But it survived because it always had backdoors, a Chinese bank, some Turkish intermediary in the middle, and the shadow fleet involved in this whole story. What is being announced today is the closing of these doors, these back doors, one by one, with the first and last name of whoever is on the other side. And I want to show you here in 3 points why this package is different from anything that came before. The first point is the size of the target. Until now, each round of sanctions would target a list of names. That's how they did it until now. A specific ship, not a company, a specific ship. Buy a small Chinese refinery, a shell bank in Hong Kong. It was like picking ants out of sugar, one by one. And now the target was no longer the company, but the entire country, which served as a lifeline for the regime. That's the target now. Any country that collaborates with the regime will be subject to American sanctions. The American president himself made this very clear last week. Banks, companies, airports, or government agencies that provide any kind of assistance to Iran will face severe economic consequences. But pay attention to the word he mentioned in the middle there. Airport, in the middle, because that's new on this list, and until now I hadn't heard of a sanctions list that included airports. The second point is the instrument. In addition to the sanction, tariffs have been introduced. Anyone who buys anything from Iran could have their own product taxed when selling to the United States. This tool itself isn't a new invention. It's similar to what the Americans have already used against those who supply Cuba and Venezuela. But here I need to be precise with you, because the press conference with the details hasn't happened yet. They said they're going to use authorities that have never been used before, and no one from outside knows exactly what those authorities are. So there might be something new on this afternoon's list, and it's going to be tough, according to the secretary himself. What we can already say for sure is the size of the target. Cuba and Venezuela are very small economies, folks, really small, and the world can get by without these economies without any problem at all. Iran sits on top of the passage through which a large part of the world's oil flows and sells to the world's second largest economy, which is China. Applying this kind of measure to a country of this size has never been done before. And that's why they call what's coming the biggest financial operation ever mounted against an adversary. And the third point is the one that hurts the most, right? This time, the Americans are not alone. The United Arab Emirates, for example, of the countries, right? The United Arab Emirates used to be Iran's second largest trading partner, second only to China, and they started to impose trade and financial restrictions in stages along with the American package. When the neighbor shuts the door along with the sheriff, there won't be any way through left for him. And now I need to answer a question here that will probably show up in the comments while this video is being shared. Is this going to affect the average Iranian, the shop owner, the family that has relatives outside of Iran? On paper, no. Let me make that very clear. On paper, theoretically, no. They haven't released it yet. It might be there in some clause, but for now, on paper, no. The rule targets the regime and those who do business with the regime. State-owned banks, the state oil company, the Revolutionary Guard, the Front Company, Ghost Fleet ships, food and medicine are exempt according to American law, and this has been the case for years. But there is a huge gap between what is written and what actually happens at the bank counter. And this gap even has a name in the financial market. It's called overcompliance. It works like this. No foreign bank wants to find out later that the money that went through it was connected to a sanctioned company. Billion-dollar fines have already happened, and the manager knows this very well. So the bank doesn't do a case-by-case analysis. It cuts off anything that even smells like the Iranian regime, including what's allowed by law. This has already happened in previous rounds, and it's documented that this has happened. A European company refused to sell bandages for a sick child, even with a humanitarian exemption. The reason was just to avoid taking any risks. And human rights organizations have reported missing medicine in Iranian pharmacies, not because it was banned, but because the bank has to take a risk. And the next one, pay attention to this argument. What changes this time? Before, the risk for the bank was getting fined. In this round, the warning is that the bank's entire home country could lose access to the American market. When the risk goes up like that, the manager is quicker to cut people off. And that's when the first to pay isn't the Revolutionary Guard colonel. He's been operating outside the system for decades with gold, cryptocurrencies, and shell companies. The first to pay is the small merchant, the student abroad, and the family that needs to send money into Iran. And I'm saying this because it's true, and because the people who watch this channel deserve the full picture, as always. And I also need to put the other half of this on the record. And I'm going to tell you something that's not pleasant, but it's the plain truth. There is no way to overthrow a regime like this without the people of that country feeling it directly in their wallets. It has never existed anywhere, at any time. Economic siege, blockade, sanctions, war. In all of them, those inside pay part of that price. It's always been that way, and it will continue to be that way. It's a cost that no one can avoid, and anyone who tells you otherwise is truly deceiving you, because there is no other solution. What you can do is point out the source of the cost, and the ones who put the Iranian people in this position were not those who signed the sanctions. It was the regime that chose to spend on missiles, militias, and the atomic program the money that should have been spent on medicine. And there is a weak point in this whole strategy. That weak point is called China. China has already said 1,000 times that it does not recognize unilateral American sanctions. And most of the money that still goes into Iran comes from there. And there's also a detail that almost everyone missed. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs belatedly released information about a meeting from the 17th, only now, on August 17th. Their vice minister met with the Iranian deputy foreign minister in the Chinese capital. In other words, while the Americans were setting up this blockade, China kept the door slightly open. If this explanation is helping you understand what the headline doesn't tell you, give me a like now. I think I already deserve your like. It only takes a second and you really help the channel a lot. Now let's look at the Iranian responses and pay attention to the order because they escalate step by step. The first step was, as always, irony. The spokesperson for the Revolutionary Guard said that when the American president announces economic war, that's a disguised admission of military defeat. According to him, if the Americans had won on the military front, they wouldn't need to start an economic war now. And he added that economic war is nothing new, because there have already been 47 years of sanctions on all sectors of their economy. According to him, what the enemy is doing now is just creating perceptions in people's minds. And the second step was oil, and it's that threat I already mentioned at the beginning of this live stream here. Not a single drop going out through the Strait of Hormuz, and any country that supports the economic war, in other words, helps wage this economic war, will be treated as an enemy. And this message also has a target, and the target is on the other side of the Gulf, is for the Arab neighbors who have been closing bank accounts and cutting off trade with Iran in recent weeks. The third step involved the ship. Iran warned that any vessel violating the transit rules in the strait could be detained or even confiscated. At least they've changed their tone, right? Before it was shot down, sunk, destroyed. Now it's confiscated or detained. And the National Security Commission of the Iranian parliament approved the toll fee for passage through the strait. Now, just look at the size of the contradiction. On the same day they say that no oil will pass through there, they approve how much they're going to charge those who do pass. You can't charge a toll on a road you say is closed. Do you agree? The fourth step was Europe, and the one who stepped up was the spokesperson for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He said that if European countries take part in any aggression against Iran, the Iranians will attack the American bases located within those countries' territories. According to him, no country needs to be afraid of Iran unless it makes its own territory available to the United States for an attack. And he added that Iran reserves the right to strike at the source of any action taken against them. He is speaking directly against Bulgaria here. That's basically the target, right? The same spokesperson denied the figures on how much oil the Americans say is leaving through the strait. He called all of that psychological warfare by the enemy and stated that such a movement simply does not exist. And we're now watching the Strait of Hormuz here in real time, folks. There really aren't any ships moving here at this moment, at least with their transponders on, right? There's absolutely nothing. And the buildup of ships inside and outside here is enormous. And the fifth step came from a man who is part of the Iranian negotiation team, a professor who appears all the time in the international press. He wrote that in the coming days, it's quite possible that the military confrontation will flare up again. He said that every regime that collaborated with the Americans to leave the Iranian people hungry will be dealt with harshly. And he finished by saying that the world economy is on the brink of the abyss. Put these 5 steps together and you understand what's happening in there. Whoever has a strong hand doesn't need to threaten their neighbor, doesn't need to threaten Europe, and doesn't need to warn that they might start shooting again. This ladder of threats is the sound of someone feeling the pressure and wanting the other side to back down first and quickly. Yeah, look, I've been following the statements of this regime every day for many years. They've always made threats and tough speeches. This has been routine since 1979. What has changed now is the subject, and that's important to understand. They stopped talking about honor, resistance, and destroying Israel and started talking about the economy, hunger, salaries, and agreements. It was the president of the parliament saying that the country can't survive with people going hungry, no matter how much military power they have. And look at what happened with that statement today, because this shows the value it has. The American president took the headline from an American news outlet that reproduced this statement by Galibaf and posted it on his social media. The headline summarized the Iranian statement like this: "We are hungry, we can't survive." In other words, the phrase that serves as ammunition for the Americans didn't come from intelligence, didn't come from a leak, and didn't come from an opposition member in exile. It came from the mouth of the second most important man in the regime, in public, to the despair of Mortadella, who's watching all of this happen right before his eyes. It was the president asking for the end of the war. The president asked for the war to end, and it could even end today. It was the former president talking about an opportunity that can't be missed. And now is the Security Council threatening to cut off oil because of sanctions. When the regime changes the subject, it's because the pain has truly shifted. And for the first time in many years, I hear real concern in the words from the Iranian side. They've really changed their tone. For you who always follow what they say over there, they're changing their tone. And that's where the risk of this threat lies as well. A cornered regime sometimes chooses all or nothing, we know that. If they decide to start something militarily to break this siege, the response won't be proportional. President Trump, once attacked, has a clear path to declare total war with support at home and without needing to convince anyone back home. So, the week starting today is tense, and I'm not going to tell you that I know how it's going to end. And there's another scenario that I also need to lay out here on the channel. It wouldn't be impossible at all, let me make that clear for you. It wouldn't be impossible for the American president to announce soon that he's going to wait a little longer because the Iranians have agreed to talk. It's happened before, more than once, and always through the same mechanism. The regime uses talks to buy time, and time to survive. I truly hope that this time he doesn't fall for the Iranian story. And on the American side, the response came from the vice president. He said that the number one goal of the American presence in the Middle East is to ensure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. He said that despite Iranian attempts to close the Strait of Hormuz, between 7 and 15 million barrels are still passing through there every day. And he added that Iran does not have the capacity to cut off international trade routes. According to him, this reduces the leverage that the regime still has. And it's precisely because of this leverage that I need to bring you here, inside our own country. Because when the regime loses oil, loses the bank, and loses its neighbor, what remains is what has always remained for them. What remains is the armed groups it has financed abroad. Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, and Hamas in Gaza, folks, in Gaza. Every economic squeeze that happens over there shows up sooner or later at our border. Some people are saying the video isn't working. Can someone comment that the video and audio are fine, okay? Thank you. And last night, the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister called an emergency meeting with the Chief of Staff and the High Command here in Israel. And the reason? You probably saw this on social media. I'm almost sure someone posted this on social media. The reason was balloons, kites, and drones coming out of the Gaza Strip towards Israel. I know what you're thinking, right? Kites and balloons? Kites, and balloons becoming an emergency topic here in a government meeting? They did, and I'll tell you the reason for that. That's exactly how it started back then, the routine that the border communities learned to call normal. First comes the kite with fire right at its tip, which falls near the fence and burns the neighboring community's crops. Then comes the incendiary balloon, which goes higher, catches the wind, and reaches much farther into Israel, burning more crops. Then comes the balloon with an explosive attached, which is no longer meant to burn but to injure anyone who gets close. They put grenades on these balloons. Then comes the drone with a camera that photographs the soldier's position. And when no one reacts to any of this, we already know what comes next, right, folks? And there was an alert in a community in the Gaza region last night that ended with residents, emergency teams, and soldiers trying to bring down a balloon and a kite in the sky. And the joint statement from the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense today was short and very direct. Israel warned that if the launches do not stop immediately, the military will increase targeted operations against those responsible and will evacuate the population from the areas where these launches originated. And the Prime Minister had a line that sums up his entire new policy. He said that we will not return to the reality that existed before October 7th. So along with that, the army released today the results of two operations inside the Gaza Strip. In the first one, they attacked Hamas weapon depots, with 2 terrorists eliminated and 7 wounded. In the second, they attacked a weapons manufacturing site in the central region of the Gaza Strip and eliminated the commander there. He was a man who participated in the production of explosives and anti-tank missiles for the terrorist organization Hamas. And there is a detail in this second operation that says everything about how they operate. That manufacturing center, you will soon receive a message or some news about it. It had been set up right next to a humanitarian aid distribution point of an international organization, a bomb factory right next to a food line. And on the other side, Hamas responded by accusing Israel of attacking because of children flying kites. This argument isn't new, and that's why it bothers me so much, guys. Before October 7th, it was exactly the same thing. Every time the army responded to a balloon or a kite, someone would say it was a military overreaction. It was just kids playing, they all said, and Israel was shooting at paper kites. And the world bought that argument, and the pressure was put on Israel. Meanwhile, on the other side of the fence, they were digging tunnels and training the force that attacked our communities on October 7th. We already know how this story ends for those who treat kites as just a game. It ended on that Saturday in October. Moving now to the north of the Gaza Strip, a video appeared yesterday that shows what I already told you here in the last live stream about the internal war that is happening there. Militia men fighting Hamas captured a Hamas member and he appeared tied up in this video. He admits that he is a Hamas police officer and that he had been sent by the organization to work inside a hospital in the north of the Gaza Strip. And it's worth explaining to you why Hamas puts people inside hospitals. You must be asking yourself, why did they send him to work there? Maybe because there isn't any other work, right? That's what people are saying out there. He went to work there because there was no other work. They put him to work in the hospital. First, my friends, because the hospital is the most protected place there is during war. And second, because a hospital is a source of information. Every militant wounded fighting against Hamas who faces Hamas ends up showing up at this same hospital to get treated, with their name, their face, and their family with them. Whoever is wearing a badge in that hallway sees who arrived, sees who brought them, and passes the information on to the terrorist organization. It's not a police officer taking care of the sick, it's a lookout working in a lab coat. What Hamas did to the opponents since they took over Gaza is now coming back to them in the same way. Now let's get to the two pieces I promised you at the beginning of this live stream. Local time is 2:45 p.m. for those who asked. The first is a meeting that took place today in Jordan. The official Syrian news agency confirmed the meeting. A Syrian delegation led by their foreign minister sat down today with a high-level Israeli delegation. And it was all under American sponsorship. The topic was to ease tensions after the recent attacks on Syrian territory against the Turks. And according to the statement, the conversation focused on two things: to set up mechanisms, to manage to set up practical mechanisms to stop these attacks and revive negotiations on a security agreement between the two countries, between Israel and Syria. The Syrians repeated their position that the Golan is Syrian territory, but they also said that it's still too early to discuss the final fate of that area there, which is the Golan Heights. The immediate priority they put on the table is different. They want the withdrawal of Israeli forces to the lines where they were before December 2024. I'll show our map here. They want the forces to leave this line here. Look, this purple one that goes past this line. This here is the Golan Heights, folks. Where this purple line is, this is the Golan Heights. The forces are here at this point, beyond this line. They want Israel to return to the Golan Heights where they were in December 2024. That's hardly going to happen now. Hardly. And they also want the return of the 1974 disengagement agreement. And there was also a point on the agenda that's worth keeping in mind. Both sides discussed the importance of bringing Israel and Turkey closer together. The goal is to prevent the tension between the two from spilling over into Syria. Add to that what was published yesterday by an Israeli journalist. He said the following: the head of Mossad met with the Syrian foreign minister, and the meeting was reportedly successful. In other words, while the world was publishing headlines about escalation, there were people sitting and talking in Jordan. And the second piece closes the circle of this live stream because it goes back to the topic that started it all of this today. While the Americans tightened the economic pressure, there are messages from them going to Iran through other channels. And the bearer of this message is what matters in this whole story. It's the commander of the Pakistani army. And he lands in Iran today. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, he has already arrived there and the statement has already been made. But he is on his way to Iran today. The one who announced the trip was the spokesperson for the Iranian foreign ministry yesterday. And two sources from the Pakistani government confirmed this as well. We're live. Yes, Carlos. Pakistan has become the mediator in this negotiation between the two countries, and the Iranian foreign minister had already spoken with him by phone. And the leaked agenda is as follows. He will address the Islamabad Memorandum, for those who still remember the Memorandum of Understanding between the United States and Iran, about the warning from the American president. I don't know what warning that is, about the situation after the pact signed in Mecca. Do you remember the pact in Mecca? And about the problem with the Houthis. Pay attention to the date they chose for this visit. Nothing is by chance. He arrives on the same day the Americans are going to announce the details of the sanctions package. And now, put together the pieces you have from last week. This month, Pakistan signed a mutual defense pact in Mecca with Saudi Arabia and Turkey. And the Iranian spokesperson himself said today that Iran did not receive a formal invitation to join that pact, but that it did receive proposals on the matter. Just look at the picture that's forming. The American message for Iran is being delivered by the military chief of a country that has nuclear weapons. This same country has just signed a defense pact with two of Iran's historic rivals. And at the same time, this group is sounding out Iran to join the pact. It seems like a huge mess, doesn't it, folks? I think it's very unlikely that Iran will join this pact, especially because one side is Sunni and the other is Shia. I don't want to believe that this will happen. That would make Turkey lose what it wants. Actually, control over the Sunni axis. It doesn't exist, but there are no coincidences on this board. There is positioning. And this is where I wrap up with our little Hebrew word for today. And the word is, write it down, matzoro. For those who want to learn the words, it will always be in the description of this video. Read the video description. Down here, the word will be written in Hebrew and how to say it in Portuguese as well. Matzoro. Matzoro means siege. Siege is a very old word and it appears when the army surrounds a city and waits without entering. And that's exactly what's happening with Iran today, with a difference in method. The old siege would cut off, the old one from way back, like in the movies we watch today, would cut off the city's water and food. The siege nowadays cuts off the bank, the ship's insurance, the oil buyer, and the customer on the other side of the world. The goal, in the end, is exactly the same as it was in ancient times, to make those inside realize on their own that they can't go on anymore. And I'm still here, from the mountains of Judea, putting the pieces together one by one, in a way that the mainstream media would never do for you. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and share this analysis in your family group, because you'll probably meet again today in the next live stream to bring you all the details from this meeting. Matzor. Matzor is spelled with tzadik. Okay? Mem, tzadik, matzor. Israel can't give in to anyone. Security can't be weakened by any agreement. Israel has to keep destroying the terrorists. This goes on every day, folks. It goes on without the media spotlight, which is excellent, right? Only those who follow the channel really are able to understand and know what happens before everyone else. And Gaza is using kites again. Yes, look, Alexandra remembers those kites perfectly. They've started once again, I think it's the third day, with kites arriving in the area near the Gaza Strip. David, they couldn't wipe out Hamas. Do you think they'll be able to take down the Revolutionary Guard? Never. They couldn't wipe out Hamas? Bruno, you probably don't live in the Gaza Strip, right? Pay a quick visit to the Gaza Strip. Go there, buy a ticket, you'd have to go through Israel, you can't enter through Egypt. Go to the Gaza Strip, take a walk around there and tell me if they haven't managed to wipe out Hamas. You know what's even better? Raise their flag, Hamas's flag that you like so much, there in the city of Jaffa. Do that and see what happens to you. Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Jacob, Seru, and Augie. Excellent video. Thank you. I don't think Trump is going to do anything against Iran because he's doing everything that Erdogan wants. He's totally influenced by Erdogan. Erdogan wants Iran to join the Mecca Pact. Ana Marcia, Erdogan doesn't want Iran to join the Mecca Pact because we need to understand and be clear that they are Sunnis. Sunnis and Shiites have been historical enemies for more than 1,400 years. That would never, ever make any sense. No, I don't believe that will ever happen. Not at all. It won't happen. A military Mecca pact with Turkey and Saudi Arabia supporting Iran would be surreal because historically they are enemies. Enemies. The BRICS, and now with Iran, will negotiate among themselves, saying they can survive without the United States. I saw a report that China has the largest oil reserves of all. Let's see if anyone... It's funny that everyone talks about the BRICS, talks about the survival of these countries without the United States, and when the United States applies any kind of high tariff on these countries, everyone comes running to the Americans, begging, for the love of God, lower the tariffs. It's impressive, isn't it? Everyone says they'll be able to survive, but so far, nothing happens. Good morning. Oh, the sound and video stopped. My friends, this is the live stream for now. If anything serious happens in the Middle East, I'll come back at any moment. And I'll be back later with the conclusion of this story about these new crushing and historic sanctions that are starting in Iran. And they should start today, unless Trump makes a new post this morning saying that, fortunately, the Iranians agreed to talk and we're going to slightly postpone the start of the sanctions. That's very likely to happen. And I'm mentioning it here because people who only watch the beginning of the live stream never see the end, never hear what I think about all this, right? I've given you the news. Now here's what I think might happen. This could happen because it's happened before. Hugs to all my friends and see you in the next live stream.